As we go back to the scientific method, we're up to collecting our data. This video is all about the different data collection methods and measures. There are 3 different kinds of data we can collect in psychological research. So which one do we use? Once again, we come back to our question. What are we trying to find out? And we figure out what kind of data is going to best provide the answer to our question. So let's talk about the 3 different kinds of data collection measures. First up, we have objective quantitative data. Then we have subjective quantitative data. And finally, we have qualitative data. Now, what is the difference? The first 2, we're dealing with numbers. That's what the word quantitative means. But objective quantitative data is data that is verifiable. Think about that word object. Picture a little object like that terrible cube, something that is tangible, that you can touch, that you can verify. But subjective data is a little bit more open to interpretation. You can't prove it. And qualitative data is always subjective, hence why it doesn't have that qualifier. All right, objective quantitative data. Let's talk about that. Objective quantitative measures are things like physiological responses, behavior counts. So when we're measuring heart rate or measuring the amount of time someone does something. It's also scores on things like standardized tests. So numerical data that you can verify and that you can prove. It's not open to interpretation. No matter who looked at it, the object that we're all looking at is exactly the same. Subjective quantitative measures, on the other hand, we're still looking at numbers. We still might be looking at scores or other numerical or quantitative data, but it's open to interpretation. These are usually self-reports. So things like Likert scales. How do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? You also might collect quantitative data in a subjective way through surveys or other kind of questionnaires. And the key thing about it is that it can't be verified. It is open to interpretation and might vary from participant to participant, or even different researchers might interpret the data in a different way. And finally, we're going to talk about qualitative data, which of course is always subjective because it's usually in the form of a self-report. Qualitative measures are when we want detailed information in a non-numerical way. So qualitative data is anything that's non-numerical. It's usually detailed information like interview transcripts. It can even be images or descriptions, anything that is non-numerical, and of course is always subjective. In order to analyze it, it is usually converted into quantitative data in some way to make it easier to read and easier to digest. Qualitative data can be collected through a number of different ways, like focus groups, and we need to do a content analysis after that, where we go through the transcript, and then also the Delphi technique, where we survey experts. So what kind of data works best? It all depends on what we're trying to find out. What kind of data is going to provide the best possible answer to your question?